In the last year, more than 500 cities and counties across America have done something almost unheard of. They've paused, restricted, or outright banned new AI data centers. Not because they're against AI, because a single large data center can drink as much water as a town of 50,000 people every single day and pull more electricity than some cities use entirely. New York just became the first state to ban new large data centers for a year while it figures out what to do. In Memphis, hundreds of residents packed a school auditorium to confront officials over one company's supercomputer. This is the part of the AI boom nobody puts in the keynote. Let's actually look at it. First, the scale of what's actually being built. Companies are planning to spend something like $7 trillion on AI infrastructure over the next few years. Every one of those dollars eventually becomes a physical building, racks of chips that need to be kept cool, and a constant massive draw of electricity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no weekends off. In 2025 alone, utilities received requests to connect data centers totaling roughly 700 gigawatts of power. For context, that's more electricity than the entire United States consumed in all of 2023. Traditional data centers weren't nearly this controversial because their power draw looked like this. It rose and fell through the day, spiked at lunch, dropped at night, left plenty of headroom for the rest of the grid. AI training clusters look completely different. They run chips at close to full utilization, continuously, for weeks or months at a time, training a single model. That's not a peak the grid can absorb and recover from. It's a permanently elevated floor. Utilities that used to plan around predictable daily and seasonal swings are now trying to plan around customers that behave more like an always-on factory than an office building. Here's the part most people skip. Why do these buildings need so much water in the first place? A modern AI chip generates enormous heat under constant full load. The cheapest, most common way to cool that heat away is evaporative cooling. Warm air gets pulled through pads soaked in water. As that water evaporates, it pulls heat out of the air, the same way sweat cools your skin. It's efficient and cheap to run, but it constantly consumes fresh water, and it works best in dry climates, which is exactly where water is already scarce. The alternative is liquid cooling, coolant piped directly to the chip. It uses far less water, but it's expensive to install, which is why most existing data centers still lean on evaporation. So how much water are we actually talking about? A typical data center uses around 300,000 gallons a day, roughly what 1,000 homes use. But a large AI campus can use up to 5 million gallons a day. That's the daily water use of a town of 50,000 people, consumed by a single building, every single day, all year. Nationally, U.S. data centers used over 17 billion gallons of water in 2023. That number is projected to more than double, possibly reaching 70 billion gallons by 2028. The clearest example of how this plays out on the ground is Memphis. xAI built its Colossus supercomputer in South Memphis, near Boxtown, a historically black neighborhood already dealing with industrial pollution. The company drew water from a regional aquifer for cooling, and a promised water recycling plant to reduce that draw was delayed. To power the site faster than the grid could connect it, the company brought in dozens of gas turbines, reportedly over 30 on site, adding new soot and air pollution to a neighborhood that already had some of the worst air quality in the city. Residents described the turbine noise as constant and exhausting. Nationally, roughly 7 in 10 Americans now say they oppose a new data center being built in their own area. Here's where water and power collide at the worst possible moment. Evaporative cooling needs the most water exactly when it's hottest outside, which is also exactly when the regional grid is already straining under peak air conditioning demand from everyone else. A heat wave doesn't just make a data center thirstier. It makes the whole regional grid more fragile. At the same time, a nearby reservoir or aquifer is under the most stress from ordinary drought conditions. Two problems that sound separate, water and electricity, actually spike together on the same days for the same reason. Now the electricity side, and this is where it gets structural, not just local. The power grid was built assuming demand grows slowly and predictably. A single large AI data center can demand as much power as a mid-sized city, arriving almost overnight compared to how utilities normally plan. When a data center connects to a local grid, it's competing for the same limited transmission capacity as homes and small businesses. On the largest U.S. grid, wholesale power prices rose 76% in a single quarter this year, driven by data center demand. That cost doesn't stay with the data center. It flows through to everyone else's electricity bill on the same grid. This isn't abstract for the people paying it. One resident on a heavily data center-loaded grid opened his January bill to find it had jumped to $281, up from around $100 the month before. Across several data center-heavy states, residential electricity prices have climbed between 50 and 94% over the past 5 years. Data centers used to be pitched as something that would eventually make electricity cheaper by funding grid upgrades everyone benefits from. Right now, with demand outpacing supply, the opposite is happening. Here's the technical bottleneck that makes this so hard to fix quickly. The large transformers that connect a new data center to the grid used to take about a year to manufacture and deliver. Now, lead times regularly exceed 160 weeks, over 3 years, and some of the biggest units take more than 5. On top of that, getting formal approval to connect to the grid at all now averages over 3 years, followed by years more of actual construction. In some regions, a data center applying for grid power today might not be fully energized for up to a decade. You can approve a permit in a city council meeting. You cannot manufacture a transformer any faster than the factory allows, which is exactly why so many places are just saying not yet. As of this year, researchers have counted more than 500 separate moratorium or restriction actions across 42 states. Denver's city council unanimously paused new data center permits for a year. Seattle, Cleveland, Minneapolis, and Charlotte have all taken similar action. Oklahoma City paused approvals while it rewrites its zoning code. Michigan alone has roughly 20 different communities with active pauses. New York became the first state, not just city, to freeze large new data centers for a year. And Monterey Park, near Los Angeles, went further than anyone. A full permanent ban on new construction. Ask the officials passing these bans, and the reasons repeat. Water systems that can't absorb another 5 million gallon a day customer. Power bills rising for everyone else on the grid. Gas turbines and noise complaints nobody signed up for, and enormous tax breaks that don't translate into many actual local jobs once construction ends. These buildings run mostly on automation, not people. None of these cities are saying no to AI. They're saying they were never asked, and they're the ones absorbing the cost. There's also a money mismatch driving local anger. Cities frequently offer data centers massive property and sales tax abatements to win the project, sometimes worth hundreds of millions of dollars, on the promise of jobs and economic growth. But a finished data center is one of the most automated buildings you can construct. Security, HVAC technicians, a small operations team, often just dozens of permanent jobs for a facility that cost billions to build. For a lot of city councils, that math, a huge tax giveaway against a handful of permanent jobs, with real ongoing water and power costs left for everyone else, is what actually tips the vote toward a moratorium. There are real fixes in motion, just slower than the backlash. Liquid cooling, which uses a fraction of the water evaporative system's need, is projected to power roughly half of new data center installations by 2031, up from a small minority today. Some companies are pairing new sites with dedicated water recycling plants and on-site power generation, instead of straining the shared grid. Though Memphis shows those promises don't always arrive on schedule. And some states are starting to require data centers to pay their fair share of grid upgrade costs, instead of spreading them across everyone's bill. The technology to fix this exists. The question is whether it gets deployed before more cities just close the door. A few honest caveats. Water and power figures vary enormously by climate, cooling technology, and how efficiently a specific facility is run. Treat the numbers here as representative ranges, not universal constants. The list of moratoriums is a fast-moving, constantly updated count, so the real number by the time you're watching this may already be higher. And every case study, including Memphis, has more nuance and more local context than fits in one video. This is meant as a starting map, not the final word. So who's actually right here? Cities aren't wrong that the current model shifts real costs onto residents, water, air quality, and electricity bills, without much local benefit to show for it. AI companies aren't wrong that the compute has to physically exist somewhere, and that a chaotic, city-by-city patchwork of bans makes it nearly impossible to plan responsibly. The honest answer is that this industry grew faster than the permitting, engineering, and regulatory systems around it were built to handle. The moratorium wave isn't cities being anti-technology. It's the predictable result of an industry that scaled first and asked permission later. Here's why this matters even if you don't live near a data center. This is the actual infrastructure cost behind every AI subscription and every free chatbot query. It just usually shows up on someone else's water bill and electricity statement instead of yours. If a data center is proposed near you, the water and power numbers in this video are exactly the questions worth asking at the public meeting. This fight is going to keep showing up in more cities before it settles, and now you know what's actually driving it. That's the real AI power crisis. Not just electricity, but water, permitting, and communities that were never really asked. All the sources and numbers are linked in the description. Follow for more of these breakdowns.